Hello everybody and welcome to my top 5 3DS games of the year list. Sponsored of course by Luigi. It's his year after all, the year 2013. Unfortunately, his game Luigi's Mansion 2 didn't quite make the cut because I'm just doing a top 5 list, but he's always going to be in our hearts. Goodbye, Year of Luigi. So let's get right into it with my number 5 pick, Animal Crossing New Leaf. This was my first Animal Crossing game. I know it's been around for a while. There's, 4 or 5 games out now. It's been a stage in Super Smash Bros. I'd been hearing about it and I thought this is the one. I'm gonna give it a shot. And I really liked it. It turned out that it was a pretty cool game. It's a different game than most. It's sort of, the idea is that you log in a little bit every day. You can't just play through from start to finish, which is strange for me because usually I start a game and then it's 10 AM and I'm like, oh, I haven't slept, I should probably at some point resume normal human activities. But this one, you just play for an hour, come back the next day, and it sort of adds up. And I had, 40 or 50 hours of playtime by the end of it, just from these little half an hour to an hour experiences, which really says a lot. For my next pick at number 4 is Bravely Default, also known as Bravely Default Where the Fairy Flies. It used to be Bravely Default Flying Fairy, but apparently that was just too dumb a name and Europe vetoed it. Don't be fooled by the name. It is Final Fantasy. It's a sequel to Final Fantasy, I believe, The Four Heroes of Light or something like that, for the Nintendo DS. And it's made by the Final Fantasy people, and it's got Red Mage and White Mage and Black Mage and Thief, and it's just Final Fantasy, but it's a good Final Fantasy. I'm not a big fan of the latest Final Fantasy, not that anyone's a fan of Final Fantasy 13, but this is the sort of old school Final Fantasy which has a plot, but the plot is not, the gameplay actually exists, unlike Final Fantasy 13. This is basically a old school turn-based Final Fantasy game with a bit of a twist in the combat system, like most Final Fantasy games, in that you can queue up attacks. You can queue up, for example, or save up attacks. There's the 2 modes, Brave and Default. If you default, you basically guard for a turn, you take half damage or whatever while you're defaulting, and you save up that turn. And you can go to like +3 or -3 turns. So in the first turn you can use up 4 turns, and then if that defeats the enemy, then you're good to go. But if it's a boss or something, it means you're vulnerable for the next few turns. Cool gameplay style, and plus it lets you turn on and off random encounters at will, which improves basically everything about a JRPG. It should be required in every JRPG, really. So that's my number 4 pick. Number 3, Fire Emblem Awakening. I sort of have a bit of experience with it, but this was the first time I've really completed a Fire Emblem game. It's really enjoyable. It's a strategy game. It's kind of turn-based. You pick out all your moves, they pick out all their moves. If you played XCOM, Enemy Unknown, you might have an idea of the kind of game that it is, or Advance Wars. So the twist in this Fire Emblem is that you sort of have characters that can, I guess this is a spoiler, but not really, it's just a gameplay mechanic. They can have children, they can get married, and then you get a child, and then the child has characteristics and powers of each of the parents, and they end up being stronger than the parents, and you sort of can mix and match and go through many different playthroughs, have things happen different ways, and you sort of get a whole cast of people who can all die. One reason I brought up XCOM Enemy Unknown is that there's a large similarity in that the characters you have, they're all very killable. You can have a character who has lines of dialogue, who's married to someone else. You've got, you're playing as, as their child as well, and then they just die because you were careless. And it's really heartbreaking, and you have to start the level over. At least that's what I usually do, because I just want to keep all of them, my precious. Number 2 was a tough pick for me because the top 2 games on my list, I think, would be top contenders in any list in any year. They're just both brilliant games, but I think I'm going to award the second place to Pokemon X and Y. More specifically Pokemon X, because that's the one I had, because it's a cooler letter. X is a cooler letter than Y. Who wants Pokemon Y? People who care about things like which legendary you get, and things that actually make more sense than picking based on the letter. But too bad. I picked Pokemon X. It's a... Like, why would you pick Pokemon Y? Jokes that no one's made. So, Pokemon X and Y they're brilliant. I think there's a lot of people who, you know, they sort of discredit the Pokemon games. They say, oh, it's just the same, oh yeah, you're still capturing little monsters, are you? Yeah, I played that game 15 years ago. I'm so cultured. But, no, Pokemon changes a lot. Because the thing is, at its core, it's a battle game. It's always been multiplayer, and it's always allowed you to play against other humans. I've never been the biggest fan, of course, of the single player in Pokemon, because the AI are always usually pretty dumb, and you just beat them, even if you're like 20 levels lower. But that's not the reason you play Pokemon. It's like playing Street Fighter for the single player campaign, or complaining that the new Street Fighter still has them fighting in the streets. Because the genius behind Pokemon X and Y is its changes to the competitive scene. It's made things a lot more accessible on several areas, including, for example, the external values, or EVs, which basically are the extra stats that you get from having a trained Pokemon. A whole bunch of balance changes. The new Fairy type to negate Dragon type, which basically, if you were a dragon, you basically just got elevated to the top of multiplayer play. I'm a big fan of the competitive battling, and they've made it super easy. They've streamlined the whole online process. Just everything about the online in Pokemon is super impressive, especially for Nintendo, who generally Nintendo of Japan act like they're scared and confused of the internet and are about 10 to 15 years behind everyone else on things such as having usernames instead of 12-digit codes. So I was really impressed by Pokemon X. It's probably the game I played the most this year, but in my heart there's only one number 1 that I can award. And my number 1 pick is awarded to... That's right, it is A Link. More specifically, A Link Between Worlds, the new Zelda game for the 3DS. I know some of you are probably going, well, Cody, you run a Legend of Zelda fan site, aren't you a bit biased? Well, look, I'm going to be honest, Zelda fans are the most critical people you could possibly find of the Zelda franchise. Like, nobody rips Zelda games apart like Zelda fans do, because they're always hypercritical of everything, just like any fandom of any series. They always think everything's ruined forever whenever there's a new game. So, I had a lot of problems with Skyward Sword. I didn't really like Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. I thought that literally going on rails to the next location is a silly thing, because Zelda's about exploring, and you know, I've had lots of problems with the recent Zelda games, but this, A Link Between Worlds, I thought it was brilliant. It fixed a lot of things minor and major that needed to be addressed about the Zelda formula. First off, wallets. I don't know why they've kept wallets this long. The idea that, oh yeah, 99 rupees, oh well, you can't have any more. You know, which just ruins everyone's day, because then they always open a treasure chest and there's 50 rupees. They've just nailed a lot of the things that needed to be done to the Zelda series to make it open world and adventure-y again, to make it feel like just, you know, an adventure. Yeah, overall, that's definitely the game of the year for me, 3DS or otherwise. So, I hope you enjoyed my list. If you do, let me know, or tell me your list below, which is probably different because it always is. I've never seen a list that everyone agrees with in my life. But yeah, feel free to comment, and I might do another list later if this turns out to be interesting for people. So I'll see you next time. Cody out.